Hello and welcome to the Flame and Fiber podcast. This is episode 35 and it is Monday, July 31st, and my name is Barbara. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. And welcome to the podcast. If you've just found me recently, thank you for checking me out. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for all the kind comments and messages that I've gotten since my last podcast. It's been 3 weeks since my last podcast. I went away. I went to visit my sister. She lives in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas in California. I'm in southeastern Pennsylvania. And so I don't get to see her that often, but we scheduled a class, an art class, a sister's getaway art class together in the Lake Tahoe area. And so I flew out to visit her, and we stayed in South Lake Tahoe and drove up to Incline Village every day for a class, a wonderful fused glass class in at the Sierra Nevada College. So I'll talk about that more at the end of the show. And is this really a show? I guess it is. The podcast. And show you some pictures of the glass stuff that I made. I wasn't able to bring it all home. My sister actually does fused glass as an art form for her. She's an artist. She trained as an art teacher and was an art teacher for a little while, but she's been an artist for quite a while. She does mostly ceramic arts and fused glass. And she used to do fiber, and that's how I got my spinning wheel, because she doesn't do fiber anymore. And so I got my spinning wheel from her. But anyway, so I'll talk about my visit with her and my class at the end of the podcast. So those of you who are only here for the knitting, because this really is a knitting podcast, and also sometimes lamp working. This glass class is not my area of glass, but I have done it a little bit in her studio. I'm a lamp worker, and so my glass is melted on a torch and put on a wire. I happen to have some of my stitch markers here that I made. I don't know if that's focusing or not, but so I made these on my torch, and I do other stuff, but there are a couple of episodes where I actually am out in my studio and making some stuff, so I will figure out which episodes those are and put those in the show notes. You can find the show notes in our Ravelry group, Flame and Fiber Podcast Ravelry group. I didn't do show notes for the last one, but I'll try to remember to do show notes for this one. And I'll even put a note. Get podcast numbers for lamp working. So anyway, so I have been away for 3 weeks. I did get to do some knitting, but not nearly as much knitting as I expected to. I had a red eye home, so I didn't knit on the way home. And yeah, I just didn't get as much knitting as I expected to, but I finished my celery, and I'll see if I can get up gracefully. If I can't, there'll be a cut here. My day is not going as expected, so I had put this on and got ready to podcast, and then I couldn't podcast. So here's my celery, and this is and I've just put her name on the screen, KAL, but I forget her first name. You would think I would remember. This is my second celery that I've done in a row. This is done in Dragonfly Fibers Dance Rustic Silk, which is a silk noil, in the Winter Woods colorway, and I am so thrilled with how it turned out. It fits me beautifully. If I had any more, you can't see it, but it ends right here. If I had any more yarn, I would have made it maybe an inch longer, but it's fine. And I really love the way it fits. I'm so excited about it. And I made a few changes. All right, I'm definitely going to cut here because there's no way I can get back gracefully. Okay, I'm back. If I don't edit that out, I'm going to be very sad. I'm quite sure. But I did make a few changes to the pattern. This is my second celery that I did, and if you've watched my podcast before, I cast this on almost immediately after finishing the other one. So it's you only have to go back a couple episodes to see my yellow celery that was natural dyed yarn using Osage orange, and it came out to a beautiful color. And it was a very light fabric, wool and bamboo, and I really love it. But my problem is I wear a bra that has a very wide strap, and so when I was wearing that sweater, it came to like right here on my shoulders, and I was always fussing with it. And I want to say thank you, Peg. Peg recommended that I get this, and I did get this, as you can see, and these are little tapes. You probably have them. I had never heard of these, but I guess this is what they use on Project Runway and stuff. I don't know. But anyway, it's like a little double-sided tape, and you put it on your bra, and you put it, and then you stick your sweater to it, I guess. I haven't had a chance to use them because I ordered them, but they didn't arrive before I went to my sister's. But I am so excited. So I will try these and see if that solves my problem with my other version of the celery. But when I went to knit this, I decided to solve my problem. And so when you're decreasing around the neckline up to the shoulders, because this is a bottom up, and this is knitted bottom up. When you're decreasing, the pattern says to decrease so that you have 20 stitches on your shoulder here, and I decreased to 26. So I have 6 more stitches on each side of this than the pattern calls for. And well, like I said, I had it on before. I just finished weaving in the ends this morning, so I haven't worn this out anywhere, but I put it on earlier, and I was wearing it thinking I was going to be able to podcast, and then I had to go walk the dogs and do all this stuff, and so I took it off again. But I haven't had to fuss with it at all, and I am so happy with that change. Really, really made a difference. So I'm very excited about that. So if you have wide bra straps, just don't decrease quite as much. It doesn't affect the rest of the pattern at all, because you're just doing a 3-needle bind off onto the back. So that didn't matter. Really works great. So I'm very happy with how that worked out. Very happy. The other thing is I made the sleeves much longer, so they're almost to my elbows. I have, I don't have very attractive top of my arm thing going on, so covering it up is better for me than not covering it up. So I'm very happy with how that worked. So you can see the neckline and the sleeves. And I'm just really thrilled with how it came out. Now, the one unintended change that I made, see, that's not very graceful. The other unintended change I made is right here in this. This, I got off count. I don't know what happened, but there I was, and things weren't coming out exactly right. So my asymmetrical detail here, which looks fine and turns out fine, is a little smaller than the pattern, and it's a little smaller than my my other one. But it wasn't on purpose, but I realized my count was off somewhere, and I fudged it, and it looks great, and I'm happy with how it looks, so it's not a problem. And it doesn't go down quite as far as my yellow one does, so I don't know if I think that has more to do with blocking, and I knit this on a size 3 so that the fabric would be nice and dense. I did not want a see-through fabric. My other one is a little bit see-through, but this is a noil, silk noil. So I think it's going to be fine. It's not light and airy, but it's a summer top. But it actually, with the color and the density, can transition into fall very easily. In fact, it almost isn't very summery. But I'm really happy with it, and I'm really happy with how it fits. So, yay! Yay! This is supposed to be the year of the sweater, so I'm very excited to have another sweater that I'm happy with. Let me look at my notes and see if I... the other unintentional thing was, but I fixed it this morning, was I had a hole in my underarm. The way the sleeves are done, they're done back and forth picking up a stitch on each side and as you go down and you do wraps and turns. And somehow when I got to the bottom of my sleeve, I didn't keep going. I think maybe my count was off or something, so I was going the wrong direction to keep going, and then I'd be doing it inside out. Anyway, so I had 2 little wraps and turns and this little gap between them, but that's why you have a darning needle in your hand when you're finishing your sweater. Ooh, because my day has not gone the way I would normally have it. Normally I'd be, doing this podcast at 11 or 12 o'clock, but it's 4:15. It's after 4, so it must be coffee time. Here's to you, Nancy. When are you going to podcast again? That's to the Round Rabbit. She's always having an adult beverage on her podcast, but she hasn't podcasted in a while. Okay, so this is my only thing that I finished, but I'm so happy with it. The other thing that is not finished are my July socks, and it's July 31st. So I will be finishing these socks tonight. Because all my, I have 2 KALs that my socks go into, and they both need to be done in July. But these are, and I took some pictures of it in progress. I'll put a picture up here, of this before I cut it, because I did this, with the idea of the Afterthought Everything. Now, I didn't actually buy the Afterthought Everything pattern, because just saying Afterthought Everything, I'll check and see how much the pattern is. If it's only a couple of bucks, I think I'll pay for the idea. $2 for the idea is good. $6, nah, I'm not doing that. But anyway, I didn't need a pattern. Well, I could have used a pattern. But I didn't need a pattern to do it. So I basically knit a long tube that looked like that. And then I had knit on the cuff. And I think the idea of the Afterthought Everything is when you get to the bottom of the other one, you knit a cuff. But I'm taking a page from Aquila's book, Aquila from the Lefty Knitter podcast. She was doing this, and she realized that if you do it the way they say, your 2 socks end up the opposite. And she wanted hers the same, so what she did was she started with a cuff and ended with a toe, and cut it in the middle and added a cuff to one and a toe to the other. Well, so I decided I was going to do that because this was the way my sock blank was coming out. And it turns out that I like this blue part a lot. And there was an awful lot of the green coming up. And so I decided that I wanted that blue to be at least on the top of one of my socks. So I decided to follow her lead, and I just cut it in the middle, and I did not finish at the bottom. I just put the bottom on waste yarn because I want to do my heels before I do my toes, because I think that will be easier to make sure that the socks are the correct length, because then I can try them on the whole way that I'm doing them. I guess people who do Afterthought heels all the time know exactly where to put their heel, but I don't. I've only done Afterthought heels once before, and so I don't know where to put my heel. So it's easier for me to do it just like I do my regular socks, which is I do them cuff down, and I put in the heel before I put in the toe, so then I can check it out. So these are my Afterthought heels. I wrote this down. It's a thumb joint hat top, heel or toe, from the Sock Architecture book by Lara Neal. It's one of those dome-shaped heels. So I followed the directions in that book for the heel. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the toe. So my heel and toe is going to match exactly. I actually make notes about this, so I'm going to turn my page so I don't get screwed up. So I have my heels in. I went back and I added the cuff to the sock that didn't have a cuff yet. And right now I'm working on the toe of that same sock, and I'm getting ready to do the toe. So basically I just have to do 2 toes tonight so that these socks will be done for my July socks. So these will go into the Naughty Knitwit socket and the Grocery Girls sock bash. And these are for me, so they will also be part of my box of socks. So while I was working on these, typically I do my socks 2 at a time on Magic Loop. But since I had this sock blank, which is tiny, I have two toes to do, and this is all I have left. I'm hoping it's enough. I do have a little bit of other yarn that I can add to it, but it should be enough for 2 toes. But, you know, people are doing sock blanks and they have all this. Mine doesn't have anything left over. So this sock blank, I dyed this in my dye class at the Neighborhood Fiber Company. And I'm pretty sure that the young woman who is their dye director who taught the class actually knitted these up on a knitting machine for us. So I have no idea what the yardage is on this. But I also made a bunch of other changes that could be using way more yarn than I expected. But I'm going to have enough to finish these socks, I'm quite sure. But we shall see. So the changes I made were, I knit these on a size 0, which I've never done before. I haven't figured out exactly my sock recipe yet. And I was doing a 64 stitch sock on a size 1, and they just seemed too loose to me. So I went down to a 60 stitch sock, but that seemed too stretched to me. So I like the fabric of this. This is done on a 0. And I really like the fabric of this. But I started this. This is when I started at the top. I started this tube with 72 stitches, I'm pretty sure. Now, where's my, oh, here it is. As I was doing some stuff, I decided I'm going to start making a little note card and keeping it in my project bag. You know, so this one's I did, because I normally do my socks 2 at a time, I don't have to remember things because I do one for one and then I do it for the other one. But when you're doing them 1 at a time, you have to remember what you did. So I was making notes. But unfortunately, I didn't start this note card for my bag until I was at the heel. So I forgot that when I started this on 72 stitches. And I got down a little ways, and for some reason I decided that's probably too many. And so, I don't know if you can see, but I decreased down to 66 stitches, thinking that when I got to the end of my tube, I would increase back up to 72 stitches, and then my socks would match. I totally forgot that. Completely forgot that. I didn't even, it didn't even come to my mind until today when I was putting my rib on this one saying, wait a minute. Oh yeah, I forgot. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway because it wouldn't have worked for me because I wanted to use the middle part of the tube as the top of my next sock, not the bottom of the tube, which would make more sense to, flare it back out to 72 when I was finishing it. So, I like my idea of having a little card that I keep notes on in my bag. Although, I don't know how often I'll use it because I keep notes on the pattern, and I always print the pattern and keep it in my bag. And I put notes like this as keeping track of my decreases. And I do that on the pattern page. So I don't know how often I'll use this, but since this sock had no pattern, I didn't have any place to write things down, so I decided I would put this in my bag. And so that did help me when I was doing the second sock, and I'm sure it'll help me when I'm doing the second toe. But because this was a sock blank with only one strand, I couldn't do my socks two at a time, which is why I decided to do this tube idea. I had an idea that I wanted to do the tube. The afterthought everything just for fun. And I also wanted to try a 9-inch circular needle. And I don't know what's happened to that now either. But I'm less concerned about that because I hated it. I really did not like knitting with that needle. It's around here somewhere. I'll find it. I'm quite sure. Eventually. That 9-inch needle may end up in some kind of sock giveaway package, if you don't mind a used needle. Because I really, really didn't like it. And I only got about that far and decided I am not going to be doing this sock on this needle. And I just cut the yarn and cast the yarn on again with, well, I wanted a 0. See, here's the little piece left. The only size 0 I had was Addie Sock Rockets. And Addie Sock Rockets are my least favorite magic loop needle, but they're the only ones I have in a size 0. But it turns out that they're fine if you're just doing one sock, which is what I was doing the whole way down. I've been doing just one sock. So they were fine, but I am going to be investing in a size 0 high sharp, I think, because I really like the fabric the size 0 is getting. I'm going to pay close attention when I put this sock on to see how it is at the 72, because in the end the 66 is a little tight. It feels a little tight on my foot, around my ankle. If I get swollen, forget it. I'm not going to be able to wear these socks. So I'm thinking 72, but I was mowing the lawn today, you know, and you're walking around the lawn and you're thinking about things and thinking about things. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've been knitting 60 stitch socks. And now I'm going to 72. That's a lot of more knitting I'm going to have to do. I better love these socks. Well, anyway, so I'm going to try my August socks. I'll probably even start them with these sock rockets. I think I'm going to do a 72 and see what I think. Because I really do like the fabric. It's a little, you know, my socks just feel kind of, certainly the 60 stitch socks feel very stretched. So I'm thinking, well, try 72. That's going to be a bigger slog for a sock project, that's for sure. So now I'm getting ready to I'm just doing the toes for both of them and then I'll be done. I had done one other afterthought heel. And when I say afterthought, I mean afterthought. You just figure out where you want to put it and you just cut the yarn and whatever. And I watched the Kirby Werby video before I did that first sock. And the first socks turned out good. And I gave them to my daughter-in-law, which I ended up thinking maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should have kept my first afterthought heel just to see what I thought of it. But she says they're fine. And that was a few months ago. 4 months ago, maybe. I don't even remember. So this is my second afterthought heel. And I didn't rewatch that video. And I should have. Because I do not have any holes by my heels. No holes by my heels. These have not, I haven't done anything to these. No holes by my heels. Yet. But this sock is going to have holes by the heels. Because when I went to make my afterthought heel, you know, so I took my tube like this, and I figured out where I wanted my sock, and I just went snip, and I pulled all the way out. Putting on needles, pulling, and this thread was getting long, and I'm like, oh, this thread's too long, and slip. And pulling, and then I get to the end, and then I'm like, oh, shit. I needed to weave those in, and I've got this ½ inch over on this side where I made the first cut, and then I have an inch on the other side because I didn't cut it as short. And I'm like, what an idiot. I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, you know you're going to have to weave those ends in. What the heck? Totally wasn't thinking about it. Hadn't watched the video. And so I'm like, I don't know how, you know. So these do not currently have holes in the sides, but they will have holes eventually. I did what I could, but there's only so much you can do with a ½ inch of yarn. Ugh. I couldn't believe it when I stopped to think about it. I'm like, what did you just do, girl? But the other one won't. Because the other one, I clipped it in the middle. And, you know, like I'm supposed to. Because suddenly I can remember the Kirby Werby video. Which I wasn't. I just clipped. Like I knew what I was doing. But, you know. That's how I am sometimes. I think I know what I'm doing. I couldn't believe it. And I mean, I had this much yarn on that. So, while there are no current holes in these socks, there are holes there. They're just hidden holes. Hidden holes. They will show themselves at some point. So that's my first work in progress, and that's the one I will be working on tonight because I have got to finish my July socks. But when I got home, so today is Monday. I got home last week, Tuesday morning, so I've been home a week almost. And we went to visit the kids on Thursday, and I was able to take measurements of the granddaughters because both of their birthdays are in August. Sammy will be 1 on the 12th, and Isabel will be 4 on the 26th. Isn't this beautiful? This is for Sammy. She is the cutest little thing you've ever seen, but she is a chubby cheeks. Oh my gosh, she's so chubby. So this is the Wallaby. Is that what I just dropped? This is the Wallaby. Oh, here it is. The Wallaby sweater by Georgie Hallam. And it comes in all sizes, like up to size 12. So that's nice. So this is a cardigan. And it just has this lovely little eyelet detail going around the yoke. It is a top-down raglan sweater, and you do the band is a garter stitch band, and you do it as you go along. And I was just flying through this because this is Dog Star Knits yarn that Jake dyed for me. He is such a doll. This is in the sangria color. And it's 100% superwash merino, and it's his worsted weight yarn. What a dream. What a dream to knit with. But then I knew that because my Untitled KAL was knit with this same yarn. But I am so in love with this color. This is the sangria color. Isn't that beautiful? I call it, it looks like a raspberry color, but when we were describing it, it was amethyst, so it actually looks like amethyst too. Amethysts and raspberries. Isn't that beautiful? So I was going along, and as you go, you put in the buttonholes. So my intention when I started this was it would button all the way down, but somewhere after the third buttonhole, I just went zoning out, and I just kept knitting, and I forgot to put the buttonholes. So this sweater will just have 3 buttons at the top, and it will be beautiful like that. And I will put 3 little cute buttons in this. But I am so excited. So I started this on Friday. So I started this Friday and I worked on it yesterday. And next time I pick it up, it's going to be done. I gotta I'm in the middle of one sleeve. I have another sleeve and that's it. Then I gotta block it and it'll be, and get buttons for it. So in the end, but it is so cute and it is so beautiful. I love this yarn. I'm thinking I might have to talk to Jake about the sweaters quantity for me. Maybe Sammy and Nana have matching sweaters because I think this is so gorgeous. I love the tones of it. I am getting to the place where I really think I like tonals better than variegated. And I have a lot of variegated yarn back there, but I love this tonal. And once more, I'm going to stand up. And in this sweater, I had to alternate skeins, but I didn't start alternating for the first 6 inches. And I really like that skein of yarn and how that knit up better than the next skein. Must have had a lot of this bigger, bolder colors in it, because I got pretty much stripes. And then when I added in the next one, the stripes calmed down. So that one skein, I think, was pretty variegated. And I'm finding I like the other parts that aren't quite so variegated. I'm going to sit down and this will be cut. Okay. I'm back. So anyway, I am in love with this yarn, and I started Sammy's first because her birthday is before Isabel's. But she, like I said, she's a chubby little thing. So I've done the 18-month in terms of the cast on and the widths of everything. But for length, I did the 12-month because she's not particularly tall. She's just chunky. The cutest thing. Oh my gosh. Cutest thing ever. All right, so those are my 2 works in progress. I will finish those socks tonight for sure. And the next thing I'm going to start working on, I'm going to start on some August socks, and they'll be plain socks. And I haven't even picked the yarn yet. I haven't thought about them. When I finish Sammy's sweater, I am going to be casting on Isabel's sweater. And she wants a sweater that zips up because she's a big girl. But she says that Sammy's sweater needs buttons because she's a baby. And Isabel, last winter, had a hand-me-down sweater that she had gotten from a friend, and she loved it. And she called it her old man sweater. And it was basically this style sweater. And I think it was like a moss stitch. The whole thing was moss stitch. And she wore that all the time. And she dresses herself. She picks her clothes that she wants to wear. And she goes in her closet and picks it. And she picked that. I think she picked that every time it was in her closet. So I'm hoping she has the same reaction to the one that Nana makes. Her favorite color is light blue. So this, I don't know if you can see, there's all this is a very tonal yarn. You'll be able to see it better once I start knitting it up. But I think she's going to be over the moon with it. I have never put a zipper in a sweater, so I'm actually really looking forward to doing this because, I figure doing it on a smaller size is easier to start because I would like a sweater with a zipper, I think. So the Oliver is next on the needles after the Wallaby. The Wallaby is a paid pattern. I don't remember if the Oliver is or not. The Oliver doesn't have very many projects, so it will qualify for the Brooklyn Knit Folk has a knit along, which I'm not remembering now. The Hipster KAL, she's calling it. And you're supposed to knit a pattern that has 30 or fewer projects. So, you know, with the idea that we're bringing sort of new ideas into the conversation. I thought it was interesting. This is also Dog Star Knits. Jake, gorgeous. And Jake and Ryan, his wife, have started a podcast, and it's called Dog Star Knits Makecast. I'm putting it down there because I don't remember exactly, and I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes because they did a great job. They had been talking about doing a podcast, and they got a lot of encouragement from, you know, David from the Dog Dare podcast, and me, and Nancy from the Round Rabbit podcast, and I knew they'd be great. And they are charming and adorable, and not just because that they really like Dennis, but we met them for lunch to pick up the yarns, and they mentioned that meeting in their podcast, and it was a great podcast. I knew they'd be great. They're natural. So I highly recommend that podcast. They were absolutely adorable. He's not a big knitter. He's a dyer, but he is not a big knitter. I think he said that he's been working on a pair of socks for 7 months. So she's a knitter. And I'm really looking forward to their next podcast. So that's fun. I guess the next thing I'm gonna cast on after I finish the girls' sweaters, the next thing I'm gonna work on, I'm not gonna cast it on, is gonna be my Rhinebeck sweater. I started the Monte Rosa by Isabel Kramer back in March or April, but I stopped working on it when we got Pearl because I'm at the place, I'm above where you split for the sleeves, and so right now where I am in that sweater, there are 3 charts for every row I knit. And I just felt like with that puppy around, there was no way for me to sit and spread out and think about that. But I have got to get back to that because it's my Rhinebeck sweater. And Rhinebeck is coming up in October. I will be a good podcaster and look up the dates. I think it's the 21st, but I'm not sure. I'll put it down there. It's the New York Sheep and Wool Show. And it's held in Rhinebeck, New York, which is why it's called Rhinebeck. And it's very traditional to knit a new sweater for Rhinebeck and to have a Rhinebeck sweater. And so the Monte Rosa is my Rhinebeck sweater. I need to find where it is because this room, I have this camera so strategically placed. This room is an absolute disaster. And I have got to do something about it. So my sweater is in here somewhere, unless it's downstairs on the dining room table, which is also a disaster. But I need to start working on that. And I was talking to Sharon, my friend who is the podcaster in Moms with Yarn, and we've decided we needed some encouragement to knit sweaters because we both need our Rhinebeck sweaters finished, and this, I've said, this is the year of the sweater. So she and I are co-hosting a sweater knit along, and we're calling it the Spirit of Rhinebeck. So if you can't go to Rhinebeck, you can be at Rhinebeck in spirit. You can still have a Rhinebeck sweater, even if you're not going to actually go to Rhinebeck. And if you are going, you need a sweater. But if you are in need of company to knit a sweater, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a sweater knit along. And the official start is August 15th. It's going to run from August 15th to October 15th. But since whips are allowed, you could start your sweater now and it would be fine. But whips are allowed. See, I'm, like we're talking about rules, and I'm making rules like so that make sure that my sweater counts, even though I can't get a prize. But so whips are allowed. It needs to be an adult size sweater. You get an extra entry for the prizes if you use hand spun yarn in your sweater. And I think I had another stipulation, but I forget what it is. If I did, I'll put it here. In fact, I'll put all the rules, which are, I'm pretty sure there might have been 3. Whips are allowed, adult size sweater. The hand spun was added later, so anyway, it's right there across my face. These are the rules, plus I will start a chatter thread in my group. Of course, you can double dip, triple dip, quadruple dip, whatever, however much dipping you can dip with a sweater, you should dip. So you can enter your sweater in Sharon's thread. Her podcast is The Moms with Yarn, which I highly recommend. I love her podcast. And the Yarn Hoarder has a sweater along that she's doing until Rhinebeck, until October. Hers is sort of Rhinebeck focused too. And so, and I don't know who else. So there are sweater KALs out there. You're welcome to double, triple, whatever dip. That's absolutely fine. And like I said, since whips are allowed, you can start now. You don't have to wait till August 15th. So I'm going to give some prizes. I have no idea what those prizes will be yet. We just organized this yesterday. And I'll talk to her about hashtags and things like that for Instagram. And so we'll probably do that too. But I will start a thread once I get everything organized with Sharon. I'll start a thread in the Ravelry group, and people can talk about and show their progress and whatever. So that should be fun. And once I'm done with Isabel's sweater, I'm right on that Rhinebeck sweater because I really want to finish it. And I have so many sweaters that I want to knit. I'm so ready to just keep knitting sweaters. Partly because I'm so happy with how this one turned out. I'm so tickled with it. I'm really happy. And it fits me so nice. Oh, and I did the size large, not the extra large. Yay! So that's fun. All right. So that's the end of my notes because I was, because I was only writing notes about my projects per se. But I've been spinning. Oh, and I won a prize. Sharon, Moms with Yarn, was hosting a Tour de Fleece group. And I won a prize. I haven't gotten it yet. I'll show it to you in my next podcast because it'll be here soon. But it got me, and I only did it for half the time because I was away visiting my sister the other half of the time. So, but it did get me spinning. So I had shown you this yarn that I spun that do we see a theme here? Now I did not actually pick this color because this is yarn I got from Fiberista Files. Okay. All right. I spun this, and this is from Frabjous Fibers. It's the Silky Cashmerino in the oxblood color. And I loved it so much. Now I had two braids of this, so I ended up with, I forget exactly how much yarn, which I should have written it down. Oh, I did. 326 yards, 348 yards, and 50 yards. So I ended up with 720 yards or so of this. And I decided I would love to make a sweater, and I would love to make a breathing space. Now, this is not enough to be the main color of the breathing space, but this is enough to be the stripy color. So the other spinning that I'm doing is in a natural color. This is getting really blown out, but you can tell what it is. This is a Targhee, and I had 8 ounces of this Targhee, which I have spun. But 8 ounces is not going to be enough for the main color because that's what I had of the other ones. So I went in my stash, and that Targhee is BZB Fibers Targhee. And I finished that. And then I found I had bought this too. So I got a Rambouillet from BZB. And it is pretty much the same color. And this is a dream to spin. And I'm hoping... So my plan... Those of you who are spinners can tell me if I'm crazy, but my plan is to ply one single of the Rambouillet with one single of the Targhee. And I'll end up with lots of cream, and cream will be my main color with this beautiful oxblood, sangria, raspberry amethyst color as my stripes for the breathing space. That's Valimaki's sort of asymmetrical sweater. So that's my plan. So I'm a spinning maniac. Well, it works out because Pearl gets crazy around 10 o'clock at night. And when she gets all rammy, I can't sit in my chair because she thinks me in that chair when she's not tired is playtime. So, and when it gets to 10 o'clock, I'm not feeling like playing. So what I do is I leave her with Dennis and I come up here in my room and I spin for a while and then I go to bed. And spinning is really a lovely activity right before you go to bed. It's, you know, it doesn't rev me up. I mean, even reading revs me up. I have a lot of trouble falling asleep if I've been reading. People read themselves to sleep, not me. I'll stay up till 5 o'clock in the morning trying to finish a book. I'm bad. So anyway, so I've been spinning and I'm really happy with how it's looking. And so I've just started spinning that Rambouillet, and my idea is then I'll end up with enough yarn for a sweater, and I'm currently thinking I'll do a breathing space, but I'm not sure. Oh, I just remember one of the reason I thought of the Dog Star Knits Make Cast, maybe they call it the Make Cast, something like that. Because they're talking about all kinds of making. Jake did a trunk show at a local knit night. And I was so sad because I was at my sister's the night he did that. And it is, 30 minutes from my house. I would have been there in a flash. But it turns out that this tavern in Paoli, Pennsylvania, the third Thursday of every month has a knit night, and they ask a dyer. I guess they ask a dyer to come in and have a table, and that's what he did. And so in their podcast, they were talking about these knitters and, talking about what an interesting, different world of knitters is out there who are not hooked into the online knitting community because they were not aware of podcasts and, And Marianne says, and nobody was knitting a fade. Nobody was knitting a fade. In that whole room, there was not one fade being knit, and they were not, So it's interesting how the trends bounce around the internet world of knitting in a way that isn't necessarily affecting knitters who are not tuned in. So I thought that was interesting. And... which is why Jacqueline is having her knit along to try to, sort of bring in new things instead of everybody doing all the same thing. Well, I had that. I really had some resistance to doing a fade because everybody was doing a fade, But then I thought, well, I'm part of the community. You want to do what other people are doing. So it's a really interesting balance because you don't want to be doing just what everybody's doing, but you want to be part of the group. So I don't know. Figure it out. We'll figure it out. So anyway, let me show you. I do have some goodies because I got one of my goodies in the mail, and my sister has a local yarn shop. So needless to say, I went there. So the last month of the Toad Hollow Sock Club, this is their Journeys from Books. And this time, I guessed it. I told you last time this one was going to be Wind in the Willows. Toad Hall. Destinations. Literature. Destinations of Literature. And this is their interpretation of Toad Hall. I really like this. Oh, it's looking way more green on the camera than it looks in person. It really looks beige with little bits of color. And I really like it. I'll be very interested to see how this knits up because it's going to go great with my sweater because I need neutrals. I'm out there buying all these crazy colors. Well, you'll see. So I was really happy to see this. And this is such a lovely base. It is so soft. 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. Love it, ladies. Really love it. So this is my last sock yarn. They're doing a different club. They're doing a club based on the constellations. And that one is not a surprise club, so you get to see, follow them on Instagram, and you get to see what the yarn is like, and you can decide if you want to join the club or not. Their yarns have been beautiful, but I have not joined it because, contrary to what I'm just going to show you, I am trying to cut back, and I have a lot of sock yarn. So I went to this really cute store in Placerville, California called Lofty Lou's Yarn Shop. It was a really sweet store. It was a very nice store. It was sweet and make it sound like it was tiny. It wasn't tiny. It wasn't huge, but it was a nice sized store. But the thing is that they kind of had a little bit of everything. They had some fiber in there, you know, a nice selection of fiber. It wasn't just Malibu Noob fiber and that's all, which is what my local yarn shop has. They had some choices about fiber. They had bare yarn and dyes. So if you wanted to do your own dyeing, they had what you would need there. They had a section where they were focusing on weaving, and then they had lots and lots of yarn. So I bought yarn from two different companies that I had never bought before. I bought this. This is Swan's Island yarn. This is handcrafted in Maine. 100% certified organic merino wool. And this is the iCat Collection Firefly. And this is called Firefly Sapphire. And it has these little tiny patches of white. And otherwise it's indigo. And these are all the same dye lot, which I am hoping means that they'll go nicely together. Because I want to make myself a sweater, a summer cardigan with this. And this is 525 yards in 100 grams, so it's a light fingering. And I saw a swatch of this knit up, and it was just charming. It looked like the night sky with stars. I mean, it was really lovely. And so I want to make myself a nice, maybe short-sleeved cardigan for the summer out of that. And then I found some yarn that I had never seen before, and this is Mountain Colors, and it doesn't say where it's from, but Mountain Colors, and the base is called Twizzlefoot, and you can see that this is a marled yarn, so this is dyed before it is made into yarn. And this is called Twizzlefoot, and it's 53% superwash merino, 17% domestic wool, 17% silk, and 13% nylon. 450 yards per 100 grams gain. So I got two of these, and I bought them thinking I was going to make them into socks, but who knows what I'll do with them, because they've got silk in them. But I just thought these were so beautiful. I don't know. feeling a little blown out, but not too much. But I just love that marled look of this yarn. And so I bought two. One was called Spring Eclipse, and the other is called Spring Thaw. So this is the spring edition, apparently. So those are my goodies. This is what I have gotten. And I will end this podcast talking a little bit about my class. It was a fused glass class, and I had a really nice visit with my sister. But it was the longest I had been away from Dennis since we were married. So that was interesting. So it felt like a long time. I was gone. Well, I left on a Thursday and I got home on a Tuesday morning. So almost 2 weeks. But we got to play with glass, which was a lot of fun. And the class was totally delightful. The people in the class were lovely. And we had such a good time. And I got to play with power tools and all kinds of stuff. And I made some pieces. And I took some pictures today in the sun. Not great pictures, but you'll be able to see some of the pieces that I made. And basically we were cutting sheets of glass and placing them on top of each other and then fusing them together. And then if we wanted a bowl or some kind of vessel of some kind, then they would go in the kiln for a second time to slump over a mold so that they became shaped. So anyway, I mean, it's kind of nice to have the time to actually do things. And, you know, it's like these people have all the time in the world to sit there and do their thing. Now, when they slump it, you never know if it's going to work right or not. You know, the kiln gods are the kiln gods, but, it's not like me with my lamp working where I'm on a torch and it's melting and drippy and, you know, you really are, it's a whole different situation. Of course, you put it in the kiln and you go out in the morning and you're not sure what you ended up with. So, you know, in a sense, opening the kiln is always the same. It's the same for ceramic artists as well. But anyway, it was a really nice class. So I'm just going to put a little montage of some pictures from the class. Me and my sister working on the lap grinder. I made a piece. They got us in. The first thing we did was put together a piece that was going to be combed, they call it. And so we put together this piece, and it went into a really, really hot kiln, hotter than any of the other pieces we were doing. And then they would open the kiln, and you would take a big, long rake and just rake to move the glass. So you put the glass in stripes, and then you're going to move the glass. And I'll put a picture here of, unfortunately, my piece and another woman's piece cracked as it was finishing. So I'll show you a picture of my cracked piece. You can imagine very easily what it's supposed to look like. It's not supposed to be cracked. So anyway, one of the plates I'm going to show in my montage at the end is a plate that I made out of the pieces. And then I did get a cut piece about that big from the middle of it. And we tried to slump it at my sister's, and that did not work. She's going to try to slump it again for me. And so I'm actually going to see her. She's coming to visit my parents in the middle of August. So I'll see her again in a couple weeks. So, and she'll be bringing me a couple pieces that we were working on. In her studio. So the other interesting thing we did was we made layers of glass into a big block, and then we fired that. And then we sliced it in a tile saw into pieces, and then we made 2 plates with that. So this and the next picture, I was going to show them at the end. Well, I'll put those 2 right here since I just said I would. Were you made using those little tiles. And the little clear glass plate really is my favorite. So anyway, we were playing around with stencils and all kinds of stuff, and it was fun. So we had a really good time. But I was glad to be home. But I have some big glass pieces, and it was fun to spend some time with my sister. So that was good. So go over to the Ravelry group. We're going to have a knit along. And I'll open a chatter thread about the knit along, and I'll look up the rules and make sure that they're in the, you know, what Sharon and I agreed to, because somehow I'm not remembering. And I'll put that in the Ravelry group, and that'll be fun. And I will be on the lookout for some prizes, because hey, we deserve prizes if we finish a sweater. Although the sweater's the prize here. I'm so happy with my sweater. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the lovely comments that I've received. And I will see you in 2 weeks. And I hope you have lots of time to do the crafting that brings you joy. Until I see you again. Cheers. Bye-bye.